Okay, I hope that's given everyone plenty of time to connect to the through to Zoom and to the audio. Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for joining me and Insight Legal for this latest webinar on the importance of a single version of the truth, sometimes shortened to SVT, and definitely not to be confused with stolen vehicle tracking. Okay, my name is Josh Dallywell, and I am your host on this call today. I'm kindly joined by my colleague Nathan, who some of you may already be familiar with as one of our product specialists, and Nathan is monitoring the chat and QA boxes on Zoom for any of your questions. It is worthwhile mentioning at this point that if you're not already familiar with Zoom, and I guess we all should probably be by now, that if you look on the icons on the toolbar, you'll see the ones that allow you to share your thoughts and ask us any questions, which obviously get shared with the team here. Hopefully we'll be able to address some of those during this live session, but if there are any that we don't manage to cover off, or you're watching this as a recording, then please feel free to email those through to me directly. And again, I will also be sharing the team email address here towards the end. This webinar is being recorded, so we will be making a copy available to everyone who has registered, and I guess you'll get a link to the video on YouTube as a private link. It's normally likely that I'll be going out either later today or tomorrow. Okay, now for the benefit of everyone who's joining who isn't already familiar with Insight Legal, and I see a few new names on the registration list. Insight Legal is a legal software company, and we typically work with practice managers, finance managers, and senior partners in law firms, really anywhere from sole practitioners to businesses of about 150 people, although I think our largest client now has over 200 users, but we kind of typically work with your high street law practices who do a variety of different types of legal work. Now, there are several reasons that we get approached by firms wanting to change their software provider, and that's usually down to a small number of very important issues. Either the firm lacks the level of support they need from their existing legal software provider, their current product has reached its end of life, so is no longer being updated, or the costs or contract terms are unfavorable or just not suited, or the software is just not suited to the needs of a modern growing firm. So if any of that sounds familiar to you, please feel free to reach out to Insight Legal and we'll see if we can help. Okay, now in terms of, I guess, kind of what we have in store for you, or what I have in store for you today, I'm going to talk about kind of what we mean by a single version of the truth, okay, and what that might mean for a law firm and your data and systems, and look at also kind of what happens when you don't. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, we will be sharing a copy of the recording of this session, so sit back and relax. There's no need for you to be scribbling any notes during this call. Okay, so what do we mean by a single version of the truth? Well, SVT, as it's shortened to, is essentially a standard and a practice that ensures all data within your law firm remains consistent. So information doesn't exist in different versions and sits in different places. Nothing is diluted, corrupted, or and obviously all the information in your law firm remains, it's reliable, it's accurate, it's accessible, timely, and relevant. Okay, now SVT normally requires a central authority, and in this sense, that authority is your legal software. Okay, and that acts as the only source and the final word on all data, all documents, and all records within your firm. And obviously, without it, a key file or piece of information could exist in several different locations and in different versions. and different people could believe that theirs is the most correct or up-to-date version. Okay, and an important piece of information could be present in one system but also absent in another, and as you probably already know, if you've experienced this, that can wreak havoc not only for compliance but also for billing, accounts, and also for your practice management reporting. Now, when we often hear about the term a single version of the truth, we often hear it from firms when they're either looking at legal software for the very first time, or they're looking to change their existing system. And that existing system is usually built up of multiple component parts which don't either integrate or sometimes talk to one another. I guess probably the most recent example that I have is of a law firm in the northwest of England that recently switched to Insight Legal, who at one time had 5 separate systems. So one for email document management and storage, one for client and matter information, one for time recording, one for their office account, and another for the client account. Now, at one point in the last decade, they had sought out the best pieces of software for each of these elements of their staff daily routines without any of them actually talking to one another. There was duplication of effort, and when you have obviously 5 different systems, there's a lot more to learn, maintain, and ultimately pay for. And that's a fairly extreme example, but it's very common for firms to have 2, 3, or 4 systems. And it's not until you're shown another way that often firms will often look to change. And it's a worthwhile exercise for any firm to have a look at what software you already have in place. Okay, do you use Outlook for your emails? Do you use Microsoft Office for your documents? Do you have separate accounts ledgers for your client and office accounts? Where do you store your documents once they're produced? Do you have a separate system for AML checks and producing forms? Okay, and do they all talk to one another? And when we're talking about here about whether they talk to one another, is do they link together? And so can you go to one place where you can see all the client matter and accounts information in one place through one interface? Or do you have to look at them all in isolation? Okay. Is the system, for example, you use for submitting your VAT returns compatible with Making Tax Digital? Do you use a separate system for conveyancing workflows, completion statements, etc.? Okay. Now, from a compliance perspective, it doesn't really take much for a crucial document or piece of information to get either buried, lost, or left behind. Any slight inaccuracies in file naming, forgetting to attach a file to an email, or saving something in the wrong place can be all that's required for something important to go unnoticed. Perhaps that's a conflict of interest or a detail about a potential client that might make working for them more complex or even completely untenable. Obviously, legal billing is complex at the easiest at times, but obviously you want to present an accurate and professional looking invoice to your client. You have to gather a variety of costs, which might include disbursements, time recorded, any other costs and professional services. Now, if you're trying to pull all that information together from a number of sources of expenses and billable hours that are disparate and unclear, it's very easy to end up charging either too little or too much, or wasting time on that whole process. Okay, now, as you probably already know, every organization needs to keep a track of its finances, but law firms in particular also need to manage accounts of their client files. Once again, there's a huge complexity and numerous moving parts here, as well as substantial regulation and scrutiny. Get your accounts wrong, and believe me, this is more important than this is actually probably more common than you actually might think. The number of firms that we talk to whose number one motivation for changing software provider is because they use multiple accounts, software systems for their client and office accounts. And when your ledgers don't balance, you have a major problem, and you can obviously face penalties, reputational damage, or disqualification. And even if the regulatory consequences aren't threatening, the outcome of your cases can often depend on timely and accurate accounting, which is obviously made more difficult to maintain when records and documents are missing or in disagreement or in separate locations. When it comes to making practice management or strategic management decisions about your firm, you wouldn't want to take any action without crucial performance data and contextual information. Fee earner performance, case duration, cash flow forecasts, and profitability will, among many other insights, inform the direction that you take. Now, if you can't rely on that data you have, or you can't be sure that you have the full picture, then you could be basing your strategy on essentially what is fiction. Okay, what's more important is obviously your obligations to HMRC, and any mishaps there. If your records are incorrect and your VAT submissions are wrong, well, I'm sure you know better than I do what the consequences of that are. Okay, if you don't manage your documents, emails, and client communications through essentially one single version of the truth, now might be the time to start thinking about what those inefficiencies are and what they're costing your law firm and essentially you as a business. Now, even if not everything in your case management sits in one place, it's worthwhile looking at or having systems that can at the very least talk to one another. And by that, what I mean is automatically allowing you to share or link information. I have a few other examples of here whereby a firm might be using a specialist provider, one, for example, that you use for conveyancing workflows or document registers, legal forms, or document registers. I think gone are the days when you need to have staff to take a form that's been posted in by a client or emailed to your firm, and someone needs to manually re-enter that data into your case management. And again, essentially, if you've got multiple systems trying to essentially run one function, think about the number of times you have to enter that client data into different documents, into different templates to get the desired outcome. Now, I've listed here some of the common problems that occur when you don't have a single version of the truth that everyone in the firm can rely upon. Now, I don't need to go into too much on compliance because obviously you'll be aware of that, or certainly the repercussions of that better than I ever will. But you know, whether you have kind of safely and adequately onboarded a client and carried out the relevant checks, and can demonstrate through an audit trail that's occurred should anyone come asking. Now, one of the most common challenges that law firms face is one of time management. A law firm's most precious asset is time. I always say again and again that time is money and money is time. And you know, for law firms, you know, I guess learning to manage your time better, by doing so, you'll be able to serve your clients better and have a better work-life balance. Removing duplication and adding automation can also help with efficiencies and allow you to spend more of your time on the tasks and the work. So obviously the tasks that make you money as opposed to administration. And once you get all your documents and your schedules in order, not only will you be able to be less stressed out, but your clients will appreciate the fact that you're on top of things. I'm also sure you don't need to tell me that one of the biggest challenges faced by law firms is keeping clients happy. And key to that is managing client expectations and and they want to know how their case is progressing and that you haven't mislaid or forgotten important information that they've already provided you with, and that their billing is accurate. Okay, and then finally, this final one here is the final one here is on accountability, and this is a tough one, particularly for practice managers and senior partners who don't always have the correct information available in a timely manner, and you don't know where your clients are coming from, whether your fee earners are hitting their billing targets or not spending too long on menial and repetitive tasks. or are doing work that's simply not profitable. But the details of that is buried in the data and you don't have a clear reporting. Okay, I've had a call from a senior partner recently at a medium-sized law firm in Newcastle who have two fee earners who both bill the same amount each month. One who works a solid 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday, and is consistent with their billing. And another who arrives early, leaves late, works weekends, and shows classic signs of burnout. But unless you know what people are doing when they're at work, what's holding them back in their day-to-day working lives, it's very difficult to know what you can improve. Okay, so this is really kind of a quick summary of what we're talking about in terms of kind of a single version of the truth. There is also a handout that we have as a downloadable white paper on the Insight Legal website. Now, before I kind of hand over to you for any questions, I've deliberately kind of left this next slide blank because what I want you to ask is what you think the next steps should be in your firm. If the people in your firm are unhappy with the way that they're currently working or have to carry out the same task more than once, chances are they're already probably vocalizing it, but you're not attuned to those grumblings. So, and obviously one thing that we can all do better is listen. Okay. Now, I'm going to have a quick look at, see if there's been any questions posted here on the chat to my colleague Nathan. Hopefully he's been picking up your questions during the session, but I guess there's one already here that he's passed on to me to share, and that is, and I have to read this out, if a firm does have multiple systems that don't necessarily talk to one another, what's the recommendation? I think the first thing that you have to do here is to look at obviously what problems internally that's causing you. Okay, now you can have, for example, two or multiple systems that aren't required to talk to one another, but obviously what's the impact that that's having on your I guess the day-to-day workings of your fee earners, your account staff? Is it requiring duplication of effort? Is there multiple entry points I guess multiple data entries into multiple systems? Okay, now if that is the case, what you also have to look at is what the impact of that is. Okay, is it causing people to get frustrated with their roles? Is it causing them to work late? Do people not have a work-life balance as a result of having to do multiple tasks, which could essentially at some point be either automated, whether in producing documents, for example, capturing data, and that data sit in multiple places across those multiple systems through one point of entry. So I think until you kind of know what the impact of that is, and I guess kind of the impact not only in terms of the accuracy of your data, but also the I guess the impact that has on people within your firm, it's very difficult for me to sit here and say, I know exactly what you should be doing. Obviously, very much like Insight Legal, there are lots of software systems out there that have obviously continued to develop over the last decade or so, and that allow you to have your AML and onboarding sit alongside your case management details, sit alongside your billing, and also all of your documents and emails in one place. Okay, and that essentially then becomes your kind of one single version of the truth. Okay. I think that's the only question that I've been put forward through by Nathan. But in terms of, I guess, kind of next steps, as I mentioned, there will be a recording of this sent out to everybody who's registered by email, hopefully later on today, but if not later on today, then certainly by tomorrow morning. We do also have our next webinar is on this Thursday at midday, where we'll be looking at AML and the implications with regard to SRA compliance and onboarding new clients. And if anybody watching this webinar would like a demo of Insight Legal, whether you're watching this as a recording or live, then please feel free to reach out to either me directly or to the team here on the webinars at insightlegal.co.uk email address. Okay, I want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us for this live session, and hopefully the session has given you some fruit for thought in terms of, I guess, improvements for your firm, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.